Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed critics, and ardent cinema aficionados, today I would like to delve into a topic that stirs quite the debate in the realm of horror, the stark juxtaposition of two works of cinema, Pearl and X. Let's explore the nature of these two movies, their distinguishing traits, and why, in my humble opinion, Pearl was a remarkable piece of cinema that towered over its very underwhelming and run-of-the-mill sibling. Firstly, let us visit X. Released with high expectations in 2022, it came adorned with a sheen of hype and promise that was, unfortunately, never fully realized. X can be described as an extravaganza of shock value, a dizzying spectacle of sensory overload, designed purely for the audience's reaction. It seems to have forgotten the immortal words of Alfred Hitchcock, who once said, "There is no terror in the bang, only in the anticipation of it." Instead, X sacrificed substance for sensationalism, and deep character development for surface-level spectacle. It traded the eerie beauty of suspense for cheap, immediate thrills. A film, let us remember, is not a roller coaster, it's a journey that takes its audiences through a series of well-crafted events that inspire a multitude of emotions, not merely a race from one shock to the next. But with all that said, I am highly aware that X is in fact a slasher movie at its core, and being the slasher aficionado that I am, if I do say so myself, I will say that most, if not all slasher movies, are in fact built around sensationalism rather than substance, and I am usually completely on board with that approach, especially in slasher movies. But the difference with X is this. I feel like we were promised more from the onset than just a bare-bones slasher movie, and more is simply not what X gave us. But I will give it this. It did have the three things that most slasher movies are typically supposed to have: an isolated location, lots of kills, and lots of nudity. So there's that. Now, contrast all of that with X's prequel, which released a few months later in 2022, Pearl, a film that didn't just showcase the horror genre, it transcended it, blending it beautifully with dramatic storytelling. What we saw in Pearl was nothing short of a drama horror masterpiece. It presented us to a story that had depth, characters that were as real as any of us, and a narrative that was hauntingly beautiful. It was not afraid to be quiet when quiet was called for, to build tension, and to just let the audience's own imagination run absolutely wild, right there along with Pearl's. This is the mark of a true horror film, one that respects its audiences enough to let them fill in some of the nooks and crannies of the narrative that we don't explicitly see on screen. Pearl understood that the allure of the horror genre isn't solely the capacity to shock, but its ability to probe the darker corners of the human psyche, to expose our fears and frailties. It respected its audience, trusting them to appreciate the slow burn, the careful weaving of story threads that ultimately created a tapestry of terror and tension. Pearl was not merely a horror film, it was a cinematic symphony that wove fear, curiosity, and empathy together into a moving narrative. Pearl presented to us characters that were more than mere mannequins in the shop window of the horror genre. They were real, they were relatable, and this was a key to the film's success. When they hurt, we hurt. When they were afraid, we shared in their fear. X, on the other hand, gave us characters that were two-dimensional, used as more shock fodder than individuals with compelling stories and emotional depths of their own. The direction and cinematography of Pearl was exceptional as well, a true testament to the art of filmmaking. Each shot was meticulously crafted, each scene framed in a way that added layers of meaning and contributed to the overall narrative. X fell short in this regard, its cinematography more akin to a frantic search for the next big jump scare than a thoughtful expression of visual storytelling. This may sound pretentious to some of you, but it's also the truth. Pearl is art. It is a colorful canvas whereon emotions, thoughts, and experiences are painted. Pearl managed to be a mirror that reflected our fears, our hopes, and our humanity. Even in the midst of its chaos and utterly insane titular villain, we could still relate to her frantic need to escape her restrictive home life and to be something more than just normal. As vain an endeavor as it may be, we could all relate to that. X, while not without its moments, was a music video, prioritizing shock and awe over authenticity and emotional resonance, which again is fine and dandy when it comes to the slasher genre, but since it was presented as something bigger and followed up by such a gargantuanly impressive prequel, it's hard to look past these factors that make X just another slasher movie. So, is it a crime that X took this approach? Is it a crime that X was in fact just a simple slasher movie? Absolutely not. But it does stick out like a sore thumb when a prequel like Pearl comes along, a prequel that does not Xerox or ride the coattails of its predecessor, but instead promises and delivers an elevation of the art itself, expanding the world of X in ways that X itself hasn't earned and absolutely does not deserve. This is why, despite the noise and fanfare around X, we find our hearts returning to Pearl, a true beacon of the horror drama genre. Pearl is superior to X, not because it's quieter, slower, or more dramatically inclined, but because it respects its audience, it respects the craft of filmmaking, and above all, it respects the power of a good story.